Hey guys, tonight we slip into the sun-scorched sands of the ancient Mali Empire, where salt sparkles like treasure, and slippers carry more clout than your favorite sneakers. Picture yourself trudging across a bustling marketplace, the air thick with dust and the tang of camel sweat, as merchants haggle over slabs of salt that weigh as much as a small child. It's the 13th century, and in Mali, salt isn't just for seasoning. It's money, power, and survival. You probably won't survive this heat without a good hat, so keep your hood up and your wits sharper. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the heart of Niani, Mali's capital, where the sun hammers down like it's got a personal vendetta. The marketplace hums with voices, traders shouting, donkeys braying, and the clink of cowrie shells changing hands. Salt, that humble kitchen staple, is the star here. It's not just sprinkled on food. It's a currency that buys houses, horses, and loyalty. Back then, salt was as valuable as gold, sometimes more so, because it preserved food in a land where the Sahara's heat could turn meat to mush in hours. A single slab, hacked from the distant mines of Tagaza, could make a merchant richer than a camel's hump after a rainy season. You see traders, their robes dusted with sand, weighing salt blocks with the precision of jewelers. One wrong move, and they're out a fortune. Historians note that Mali's salt trade was a cornerstone of its economy, documented in Arabic chronicles from the 14th century, which describe caravans hauling tons of salt across the desert. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some traders swore salt had protective powers, rubbing it on their skin to ward off evil spirits during long journeys. You can imagine them, shimmering like human salt licks, hoping jinn don't fancy a taste. Historians still argue whether this belief was widespread or just a merchant's tall tale to justify overcharging. You smirk at the thought. Imagine paying extra for blessed salt at your local grocery store. As you weave through the market, you notice the salt isn't just raw slabs. Some are carved into intricate shapes, cubes, pyramids, even crude animal figures, because presentation matters when you're selling to Mali's elite. The empire's tax system, already a well-oiled machine by Sundiata's time, latches onto this trade like a hungry tick. Every slab entering Niani gets slapped with a tax, paid in gold, cowries, or sometimes a grudging handful of salt itself. You see a tax collector, his turban slightly askew, scribbling on a palm leaf with a reed pen, tracking every transaction. He's not just counting coins, he's ensuring the empire's coffers stay fat enough to fund armies, mosques, and the occasional lavish feast where someone inevitably chokes on a date pit. True story, or so the griots sing. The griots, Mali's oral historians, weave tales of salt's value into their songs, and you catch one humming nearby, his voice low and rhythmic, lulling the crowd. He sings of a trader who swapped a salt block for a bride, only to find she was saltier than his wares. Joke number one, folks, don't fall asleep yet. The tax on salt isn't just about money, it's about control. Mali's rulers know that whoever controls the salt controls the Sahara's pulse. You feel the weight of that power as you watch a caravan unload, the camels groaning under their salty burdens. Each block is a piece of the empire's heartbeat, and you're about to learn how this gritty trade shaped a kingdom that made Europe's monarchs look like small-time landlords. You're still in Niani's marketplace, the air buzzing with the scent of roasted millet and the faint jingle of cowrie shells. Your eyes catch a new sight. Slippers, not just any old flip-flops, but intricately woven creations that scream status louder than a griot's drum. These aren't your average sandals. They're the Gucci of the 13th century, dyed in reds and blues, some studded with beads that glint like tiny stars. In Mali, slippers aren't just for keeping sand out of your toes. They're a taxable symbol of wealth, and you're about to see why the empire's rulers decided to cash in on them. The sun's still beating down, so you adjust your imaginary turban and sidle closer to a stall where a merchant polishes a pair like they're sacred relics. The Mali Empire, at its peak, had a knack for taxing anything that moved, glittered, or stepped. Historical records, like those from traveler Ibn Battuta, confirm that luxury goods, including finely crafted footwear, were taxed to fund the empire's grandeur. Slippers, especially those made from leather or woven with imported fibers, were a badge of rank. Only the wealthy could afford them. You watch a noblewoman, her robe trailing like a peacock's tail, haggle over a pair with gold-threaded straps. She's not just buying shoes, she's buying clout. The tax on these slippers, paid in gold dust or salt, fills the king's treasury, and you can almost hear the coins clinking into royal coffers. But here's the quirky bit. Some Malians believed fancy slippers could curse their wearers if crafted by a jealous artisan. You picture a shoemaker muttering hexes into the soles, hoping to trip up a rival, probably not covered by the empire's refund policy. Historians still argue whether this superstition influenced slipper prices or was just market gossip to spook buyers. You chuckle at the thought of a noble checking his sandals for bad vibes before a big meeting. Imagine your boss doing that with their loafers. As you wander, you notice the slipper tax isn't just about money. It's a social flex. The empire's rulers, keen on keeping the elite in check, use the tax to remind everyone who's boss. You see a tax collector, the same sweaty guy from the salt stalls, remember his crooked turban, now inspecting a pile of slippers. He's got a sharp eye, noting which pairs are fancy enough to tax and which are just peasant grade. The tax is steep, sometimes a third of the slipper's value. And you wince as a merchant hands over a pouch of gold dust, muttering under his breath. You're tempted to whisper, "Buddy, at least you're not taxed for breathing." Yet. That's joke number 2, delivered with a sleepy wink. The slipper stalls are a riot of color and chatter. Artisans display their wares on woven mats, each pair telling a story of trade routes and craftsmanship. Some slippers come from local leather, others from distant markets in Ghana or Songhai, their materials taxed at every border. You run your fingers over a pair, feeling the soft leather and tight stitches, wondering how many camels' worth of salt went into buying them. The tax system ties it all together. Salt, slippers, power, like a spider web catching every transaction. You hear a griot nearby, his voice a soothing drone, singing of a king who wore slippers so fine they outshone the sun. You smirk, thinking he probably tripped over his ego first. Joke 3, folks, let's keep drifting. The slipper tax, though, isn't just about showing off. It funds Mali's armies, its mosques, and those sprawling palaces you'll see later. You watch a young boy, barefoot, eyeing a pair he'll never afford, and you feel the weight of this system. It's not just slippers, it's a hierarchy etched in leather and dye. The empire thrives because it knows how to squeeze wealth from every step its people take. As you leave the stall, the marketplace hums on, and you're ready to meet the man who built this system, the one who turned salt and slippers into an empire's backbone. You're stepping back in time now, away from Niani's bustling market, into the dusty plains where a young warrior named Sundiata Keita carves out the Mali Empire's foundations. The year's roughly 1235, and you're trudging through tall grasses, the air heavy with the scent of earth and distant rain. Sundiata, the man who will become Mali's Lion King, isn't yet the legend griots sing about. Right now, he's a determined underdog, his muscles taut from years of exile, his eyes sharp with ambition. You're here to witness how he turns a fractured land into an empire that taxes salt and slippers. Remember those flashy sandals? With the precision of a hawk snatching prey. The wind hums softly, like a fan you forgot to turn off, lulling you deeper into this tale. Sundiata's story is no fairy tale, though it's got enough grit to fill a sandstorm. Historical accounts, like the Epic of Sundiata passed down by griots, confirm he united Mali's clans after defeating the Soso king, Sumanguru, at the Battle of Kirina. This victory wasn't just swords and spears. It was the birth of a system that made Mali's markets hum. You see Sundiata, his armor patched from battles, rallying warriors under acacia trees. He's not just fighting for land, he's laying the groundwork for a tax system that'll make salt and slippers the empire's lifeblood. His vision? A kingdom where every grain of salt and every step in fine leather funds, mosques, armies, and glory. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some griots claim Sundiata's mother, a buffalo woman in disguise, taught him to walk despite a childhood illness, making his rise almost supernatural. You smirk, imagining her nudging him like a mom yelling, "Get up, you're late for empire building." Historians still argue whether this buffalo tale was symbolic or just griot flair to hype the crowd. Either way, you feel the weight of Sundiata's resolve as he stands tall, his shadow stretching across the savannah like a promise. You're walking with his growing army now, their footsteps kicking up dust that stings your eyes. Sundiata's not just a warrior, he's a strategist who knows wealth comes from order. He sets up chiefs to collect taxes, ensuring every salt slab and slipper crossing Mali's borders pays its due. You watch a chief, his robe slightly too big, scribbling tax records on a clay tablet. Early bureaucracy, Mali style. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. Sundiata's system turns scattered villages into a network where goods flow like rivers and taxes keep the current strong. You can't help but grin at the thought of him as the ultimate tax nerd. Joke number one, folks. Don't doze off yet. The land around you feels alive, buzzing with the energy of a new empire. You pass a village where women pound millet, their laughter mixing with the clank of blacksmiths' hammers. Sundiata's victory at Kirina didn't just crush his enemies, it set the stage for markets like Niani's, where salt and slippers became taxable treasures. You remember that salt block you saw, heavy as a child? Sundiata's the guy who made sure it funded his vision. His tax collectors, trained to spot a fancy slipper from a mile away, like that turbaned guy from the market, owe their jobs to his hustle. As you follow Sundiata's path, you notice the scars of war, burned huts, weary faces, but also hope. He's not just taxing for power. He's building schools, mosques, and unity. You hear a griot's voice, low and soothing, singing of Sundiata's limp, turning into a lion's stride. You chuckle, thinking maybe his real superpower was paperwork. Joke 2, delivered with a sleepy nod. By the time he's crowned, Mali's taxes are already shaping a kingdom that'll outshine its neighbors. You're starting to feel the rhythm of this empire, each step pulling you toward its heart, where salt and slippers reign supreme. You're now in Timbuktu, the Mali Empire's beating heart, where the air smells of old parchment and camel dung, and the streets hum with traders, scholars, and the occasional wandering goat. It's the 14th century, and you're trudging through narrow alleys, the sand underfoot, crunching like a soft ASMR track. Timbuktu isn't just a dot on a map. It's a global hub where salt and slippers, remember those status symbol sandals, fuel a tax system that keeps Mali's coffers overflowing. The sun's dipping low, casting golden shadows on mud brick mosques, and you feel the city's pulse as you weave through its dusty chaos, ready to see how taxes shape this legendary place. Timbuktu's wealth, as chronicled by Arab geographers like Al-Umari, comes from its position as a trade nexus, where salt from the Sahara and goods like those fancy slippers pour in, each transaction taxed to fund Mali's ambitions. You pause at a market stall, where a merchant weighs a salt slab with a balance scale, his fingers nimble despite the heat. The tax collector. Yep, another turbaned guy, probably cousins with the one in Nyani, scribbles notes ensuring every grain of salt pays its due. This isn't just commerce, it's the empire's lifeblood, turning Timbuktu into a city that makes medieval Europe look like a backwater village. Here's the quirky bit. Some locals believed salt left in Timbuktu's markets overnight could attract mischievous spirits, so merchants hid their slabs under cloths woven with protective charms. You grin, imagining a trader shooing away ghosts like they're stray cats. Probably not the best business plan. Historians still argue whether these superstitions slowed trade or just spiced up market gossip. You're tempted to whisper to a nearby merchant, "Mate, your salt's haunted. Better sell it quick." That's joke number one, delivered with a sleepy smirk. As you wander, you notice Timbuktu's streets aren't just about trade. Scholars in flowing robes debate under palm-thatched awnings, their voices a soothing drone, while manuscripts pile up in libraries that rival Baghdad's. Taxes on salt and slippers help fund these centers of learning, making Timbuktu a beacon for intellectuals across the Islamic world. You peek into a madrasa, where students scribble on wooden boards, their ink smudging in the heat. The empire's tax system, built on Sundiata's foundation, remember his Buffalo Mom grit, ensures these schools thrive. You can't help but admire the hustle. Taxing footwear to fund philosophers is next level. The market's chaos pulls you back. You dodge a camel, its load of salt slabs swaying dangerously, and hear a trader curse as he pays his tax in gold dust. The slipper stalls catch your eye again, their colors popping against the dusty backdrop. A pair with embroidered patterns costs more than a horse, and you wince at the tax slapped on it, almost as painful as stepping on a thorn barefoot. You chuckle, thinking modern tax forms might be less stressful than haggling with Mali's collectors. Joke too, folks. Keep those eyes drooping. Timbuktu's taxes aren't just about money. They're about power. The empire controls the flow of goods, from salt mined in Tagaza to slippers crafted in distant villages. You see a griot, his voice a calming hum, singing of a merchant who tried to dodge the tax and ended up with a camel as his only friend. Joke 3, served with a yawn. As you leave the market, the city's minarets glow in the twilight, and you feel the weight of a system that turns salt and sandals into an empire's legacy. You're ready to hit the desert trails next, where the real adventure of Mali's tax trade begins. You're out of Timbuktu now, trudging across the Sahara's endless dunes, where the sand stings your face and the sun feels like it's personally insulted by your existence. You've joined a salt caravan, a lifeline of the Mali Empire, hauling slabs of that precious white gold you saw in Nyani's markets. Remember those blocks heavier than a kid? It's the 14th century, and you're surrounded by grumbling camels, their breaths hot and sour, and traders wrapped in indigo turbans, their eyes scanning the horizon for trouble. The air hums with tension and the faint jingle of cowrie shells, as every salt slab here will face Mali's tax collectors soon. You pull your scarf tighter, letting the desert's rhythm lull you like a soft fan's hum. The Sahara salt trade, as described in medieval texts like those of Ibn Khaldun, was the empire's backbone, with caravans carrying tons of salt from mines like Tagaza to fund Mali's mosques and armies. You're walking beside a camel loaded with salt slabs, each one hacked from the earth and worth more than its weight in gold dust. The traders mutter about taxes waiting in Timbuktu, where officials, like that turbaned guy from the market, will take their cut. You feel the weight of each step, knowing every slab fuels the empire's grandeur, from palaces to those fancy slippers you admired. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders believed salt carried desert spirits, and they'd whisper prayers over their loads to keep jinn from stealing their profits. You smirk, picturing a trader shushing his camel to avoid waking a grumpy spirit, probably as effective as yelling at a sandstorm. Historians still argue whether these rituals were common or just stories to scare off nosy tax collectors. You're tempted to joke, "Mate, your salt's cursed, better pay the tax fast." That's joke number one, served with a drowsy wink. The caravan stretches across the dunes like a snake, its path marked by bones of less fortunate travelers. You notice the lead trader, his face weathered like old leather, checking a crude map scratched on a goatskin. Bandits lurk in these sands, and a single raid could wipe out a season's profits before the taxman even gets his share. You hear a distant howl, wind or wolves, who knows, and the traders grip their staffs tighter. The salt's value makes it a target, and you realize Mali's taxes aren't just about revenue, they're about protecting this trade. The empire stations guards along routes, paid by those same taxes, to keep the caravans moving. You pause to sip from a water skin, the liquid warm and gritty, and watch a young trader adjust a salt slab slipping from his camel's back. He's muttering about the tax rate, which can take a fifth of his haul. You grin, thinking he'd probably swap his camel for a tax break. Joke two, folks. Let's keep drifting. The caravan's pace is hypnotic, each step a soft crunch in the sand, and you feel the desert's vastness pressing in. The traders' voices, low and rhythmic, blend with the wind, like a griot's song you heard in Timbuktu. One tells a tale of a merchant who hid salt in his slippers to dodge taxes, only to limp into town looking like a clown. Joke 3, delivered with a sleepy chuckle. As night falls, the caravan halts, and you huddle by a fire, the stars above sharp as pinpricks. The salt slabs glow faintly in the moonlight, a reminder of the empire's reach. You're starting to see how Mali's tax system, born from Sundiata's vision, binds this harsh desert to bustling cities. Each slab you're guarding will face the taxman's scale, but for now, you're just a speck in the Sahara, carried by the slow, soothing rhythm of the caravan's march. You're back in the bustling streets of Niani, where the air hums with the scent of roasted yams and the clatter of market life. The years still deep in the Mali Empire's golden age, and you're about to stumble into a peculiar uproar, a rebellion sparked not by swords or starvation, but by those fancy slippers you saw earlier. Remember those beaded beauties? The slipper tax, a royal cash grab on the elite's favorite footwear, has pushed some folks too far. You're weaving through a crowd, their voices sharp with indignation as the sun bakes the ground beneath your feet. The vibe's tense, but oddly soothing, like a fan's hum pulling you deeper into this sleepy tale. Historical records, like those from chroniclers of the time, note that Mali's tax system, while efficient, sometimes sparked unrest, especially among merchants and nobles hit hard by luxury taxes. The slipper tax, targeting high-end footwear, is stirring trouble in Niani's wealthier quarters. You spot a group of merchants, their robes vibrant but their faces sour, gathered outside a tax collector's hut. They're not wielding spears, just complaints louder than a camel's grunt. The tax, sometimes a quarter of a slipper's value, feels like a personal insult to their status. You can almost hear them muttering, "Tax my sandals? Might as well tax my swagger." Here's the quirky tidbit. Some rebels hid their finest slippers under plain cloth wraps, passing them off as peasant gear to dodge the tax. You chuckle, imagining a noble shuffling through the market in fake rags, looking like he's auditioning for a desert fashion disaster. Joke number one, folks, don't drift off yet. Historians still argue whether this slipper tax revolt was a serious threat or just a loud tantrum by the elite. You're tempted to whisper to a nearby merchant, "Mate, just wear flip-flops next time." That's joke two, delivered with a drowsy grin. You edge closer to the crowd, where a griot strums a kora, his voice low and hypnotic, singing of a noblewoman who burned her taxed slippers in protest, only to regret it when thorns shredded her feet. You smirk, joke three, served with a yawn. The rebellion isn't all drama. It's a glimpse into Mali's tax system flexing its muscle. The empire, built on Sundiata's grit, remember his Buffalo Mom legend, thrives by squeezing wealth from symbols like slippers. You see the tax collector, yep, that turbaned guy again, his ledger smudged with ink, trying to calm the crowd. He's promising the taxes fund roads and mosques, but the merchants aren't buying it. One waves a slipper like a battle flag, and you can't help but admire the audacity. The protest fizzles as the day wears on, the crowd dispersing under the weight of heat and royal guards' stern glares. You wander past a slipper stall, where a craftswoman weaves beads into leather, unfazed by the uproar. Her work's still taxed, but she shrugs, saying it keeps the empire strong. You nod, feeling the rhythm of Mali's system. Every slipper, every salt slab, like those in the caravan, keeps the kingdom humming. The tax isn't just about gold. It's about reminding the elite who holds the reins. You hear the griot's song again, its cadence lulling you like a soft breeze, tying this moment to the empire's broader story. As you leave the market, the sun dips low, painting Niani in hues of amber. The slipper tax rebellion, small as it was, shows the cracks in Mali's system. Wealth brings power, but also grumbling. You're starting to see how the empire balances control and chaos, taxing everything from salt to sandals to fuel its dreams. The streets quiet down, and you're ready to meet the man who took this system to dazzling heights. His wealth so vast it made the world blink. You're now in the glittering heart of Mali's capital, Niani, where the air smells of incense and ambition, and the streets buzz with the weight of wealth you can practically taste. It's the early 14th century, and you're standing in the shadow of Mansa Musa, the empire's most legendary ruler, whose gold-soaked reign makes the slipper tax rebellion. Remember that sandal-waving protest? Seemed like a minor hiccup. You're weaving through a crowd, their robes shimmering like the Sahara at noon, as Musa's palace looms ahead, its mud brick walls hiding treasures that could make a camel blush. The sun's relentless, but the vibe's soothing, like a fan's hum pulling you deeper into this drowsy tale. Mansa Musa's wealth, as recorded by chroniclers like Al-Umari, was so vast it crashed Cairo's gold market during his 1324 pilgrimage to Mecca, a journey funded by Mali's taxes on salt and slippers. You see him now, seated on a throne draped in lion skins, his fingers heavy with rings that glint like stars. His tax system, built on Sundiata's foundation, turns every salt slab and fancy slipper into a river of gold dust flowing to his coffers. You're awestruck as a merchant kneels, offering a pouch of gold to pay his dues, while Musa nods, his calm masking a mind sharper than a blacksmith's blade. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tales claim Musa gifted so much gold in Mecca that locals thought he was a god, only to grumble when their economy tanked. You smirk, imagining a Cairene merchant muttering, "Thanks, Musa, now my bread costs a fortune." That's joke number 1. Folks, keep those eyes drooping. Historians still argue whether Musa's lavish spending was strategic or just a flex gone wrong. You're tempted to whisper to a nearby courtier, "Mate, maybe tax the gold gifts next time." Joke 2, delivered with a sleepy wink. You wander closer to the palace, where tax collectors, yep, another turbaned guy, probably promoted since Niani's market days, tally goods with reed pens. The salt trade, those heavy slabs you saw in the caravan, fuels this opulence. But slippers play their part too. You spot a noble strutting in beaded sandals, each step a taxable flex, and you grin, thinking his ego's probably taxed by the mirror daily. Joke 3, served with a yawn. Musa's genius lies in scaling Sundiata's system, taxing every luxury to fund mosques, libraries, and a pilgrimage that put Mali on the world map. You feel the empire's pulse as you pass a mosque, its minaret piercing the sky, built with gold from taxed trades. The court's alive with griots, their voices a hypnotic drone, singing of Musa's wealth as if it could buy the moon. You hear one tale of a slipper so fine it was taxed twice, once for leather, once for pride. The crowd laughs, and you do too, caught in the story's rhythm. Musa's not just rich, he's a master of control, using taxes to keep nobles in check while funding Timbuktu's schools. Remember those scholars? You see a caravan unloading salt nearby, each slab a reminder of the desert's dangers and the empire's reach. The collectors swarm, ensuring every grain pays its due, and you marvel at how Musa turns sand and sandals into power. As you leave the palace, the sun dips, casting Niani in a golden haze. Musa's reign, fueled by taxes, makes Mali a legend, but you sense the weight of his wealth. Every coin, every slipper carries the empire's dreams. You're ready to meet the cunning officials who make this system tick, their ledgers as sharp as the Sahara's winds. You're back in Niani's bustling heart, where the air hums with the clink of cowrie shells and the faint scent of sweat-soaked leather. The sun's still a relentless bully, but you're slipping into the shadows of Mali's tax collectors, the unsung enforcers of Mansa Musa's gold-soaked empire. Remember his throne dripping with bling? It's the 14th century, and you're trailing one of these officials, his turban crisp despite the heat, as he weaves through the market with a ledger tucked under his arm. These guys aren't just bean counters, they're the gears keeping Mali's salt and slipper taxes, like those beaded sandals, flowing smoothly. The market's buzz is your lullaby, pulling you deeper into this sleepy tale, like a fan's soft hum. Medieval chroniclers, like those in Timbuktu's manuscripts, describe Mali's tax collectors as vital to the empire's wealth, ensuring every salt slab and luxury good paid its due to fund mosques and armies. You watch this official, let's call him Turban Guy's sharper cousin, stop at a slipper stall. He eyes a pair of embroidered sandals, not for fashion but for tax value, scribbling notes with a reed pen. His job's simple but ruthless. Tax the salt from caravans you joined, those desert treks. and the slippers of nobles strutting like peacocks. You're impressed. He's got the charm of a snake and the precision of a hawk. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some collectors were rumored to carry lucky cowrie shells, believing they'd sniff out tax dodgers like magical detectors. You grin, picturing Turban Guy tossing shells like dice to catch a sneaky merchant, probably as useful as a Ouija board in an audit. Historians still argue whether these superstitions were real or just tales to scare traders into compliance. You're tempted to whisper, "Mate, your shells won't find my hidden slippers." That's joke number 1, delivered with a drowsy smirk. You follow him to a salt stall, where a merchant grumbles as he hands over a pouch of gold dust. The collector's unfazed, his eyes scanning for cheats. You notice his tricks. He'll weigh salt twice, claiming scale errors, or hike the slipper tax if the owner looks too cocky. It's not just greed, it's strategy. Mali's system, built on Sundiata's vision and supercharged by Musa, relies on these officials to keep the empire's pulse steady. You see a noble slip past, his fancy sandals hidden under a plain cloak, like those tax-dodging rebels, but Turban Guy's too sharp. He spots the gleam and jots a note. You chuckle, thinking he'd probably tax the noble's ego if he could. Joke 2, folks. Keep drifting. The market's rhythm is hypnotic, with griots singing nearby, their voices a soothing drone. One tells of a collector who taxed a merchant's slippers so hard, the guy walked barefoot to protest, only to stub his toe on a royal road. Joke 3, served with a yawn. You're starting to see the collector's power. They're not just enforcers, but gatekeepers of Mali's wealth. They ensure salt from Tagaza's mines and slippers from artisan stalls, like the ones in Timbuktu, keep the empire's coffers full. You pass a mosque, its walls gleaming thanks to their work, and feel the system's weight. Every coin, every slab, ties back to these ledger-wielding hustlers. As you leave the stall, the sun softens, casting long shadows. The collector moves on, his turban bobbing through the crowd, a symbol of Mali's relentless order. You're ready to explore the deeper magic of salt, not just as money, but as a spiritual force in this empire's soul, its glow pulling you forward like a desert star. You're slipping away from Niani's noisy market, where tax collectors, like that sharp-eyed Turban Guy, rule, and into a quieter corner of the Mali Empire, where the air carries the faint tang of salt and the murmur of prayers. It's the 14th century, and you're standing outside a small mud brick shrine, its walls etched with geometric patterns that dance in the fading light. Here, salt isn't just the white gold you saw in caravans or markets. Remember those heavy slabs? It's a spiritual force woven into Mali's rituals, taxed by the empire, but revered by its people. The evening breeze hums like a fan, lulling you deeper into this drowsy tale. Historical accounts, like those from Timbuktu's scholars, confirm salt's role in Mali's economy extended beyond trade. It was a sacred commodity used in ceremonies across the empire. You watch a griot, his voice a soothing drone. Sprinkle salt at the shrine's entrance, a gesture to honor ancestors and ward off harm. The empire taxes this salt, just like the slabs in Timbuktu or the slippers of nobles, but its spiritual weight makes it more than currency. You feel its power as you step closer, the grains crunching underfoot like whispers of the past, tying markets to mysticism. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Malians believed salt could bind promises, so traders sealed deals by sharing a pinch, thinking it locked their word like a magical contract. You smirk, imagining two merchants licking salt like it's a handshake gone wrong. Probably stickier than a modern pinky swear. Historians still argue whether this ritual was widespread or just a quirky custom among desert traders. You're tempted to whisper to the griot, "Mate, hope you didn't tax that sacred pinch." That's joke number 1, delivered with a sleepy grin. You linger by the shrine, where a woman in a flowing robe offers salt to a small crowd, her hands steady as she murmurs blessings. The Empire's tax system doesn't spare these rituals. Every sack of salt, even for spiritual use, faces the collector's scale. Turban Guy's cousins are everywhere. You see a trader nearby, his turban slightly askew, grumbling as he pays a tax on salt meant for a wedding ceremony. He's not thrilled, but the griot's song reminds him, salt's sacredness keeps the community tight, even if the Empire takes its cut. You nod, feeling the balance. Mali's rulers know how to tax both wallets and souls. The scene shifts as you follow the griot's voice, its cadence pulling you like a tide. He sings of a healer who used salt to cure ailments, only to be taxed for practicing magic. You chuckle, thinking the tax man probably wanted a cut of the cure too. Joke 2, folks. Let's keep drifting. The shrine's glow fades as stars prick the sky, and you notice salt's role isn't just spiritual fluff. It's practical, preserving food, healing wounds, and yes, funding Musa's mosques. Remember his gold-soaked rain? The tax on salt, whether for trade or ritual, keeps Mali's engine running, and you're starting to see its threads woven everywhere. You step away, passing a market stall where salt slabs gleam like moonlight. A child nearby scatters grains to bless a new home, and you grin, imagining a tax collector trying to tally each pinch. Joke 3, served with a yawn. The Empire's genius lies in taxing even the sacred, turning salt's mystique into gold dust. As you wander, the shrine's quiet power lingers, tying you to the caravans, markets, and palaces you've seen. You're ready to explore how slippers, those taxable status symbols, sparked a crafting boom under Mali's watchful tax net. You're back in Nyani's vibrant outskirts, where the air hums with the rhythmic tap of hammers and the scent of tanned leather. It's the 14th century, and you're weaving through a cluster of workshops where artisans craft those taxable slippers you've seen strutting through markets. Remember those beaded beauties? The slipper tax, a royal squeeze on status symbols, has sparked a crafting boom, turning dusty stalls into hubs of creativity. The sun's softer now, casting a golden glow over mud brick walls, and the steady clack of tools lulls you like a fan's hum, pulling you deeper into this sleepy Mali tale. Historical records, like accounts from Timbuktu's scholars, show that Mali's luxury taxes, including those on slippers, fueled a surge in artisan work as demand for fine footwear grew among the elite. You pause at a workshop where a woman, her fingers nimble as a griot's on a kora, weaves indigo threads into leather soles. These slippers aren't just shoes. They're art, taxed for their splendor, but coveted by nobles who pay gold dust to flex their status. You watch her stitch, each loop a defiance of the taxman's ledger, like that turbaned collector's, turning raw materials into wealth. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some artisans hid tiny charms in slipper soles, believing they'd bring luck to wearers dodging the taxman's eye. You grin, picturing a noble strutting with a secret amulet, hoping it outsmarts Turban Guy, probably as effective as hiding cash in your socks. Historians still argue whether these charms were common or just a crafty marketing trick to boost sales. You're tempted to whisper to the artisan, "Mate, hope that charm's tax-free." That's joke number 1, delivered with a drowsy smirk. You move to another stall, where a man dyes leather a deep crimson, the color pooling like blood in the sand. The slipper tax, steep as it is, drives demand. Nobles want flashier designs to justify the cost, and artisans deliver. You see a pair studded with cowrie shells, each one a taxable treasure. And you wince, imagining the tax collector's glee. The Empire's system, built on Sundiata's grit and Musa's gold, remember his Cairo-crashing pilgrimage, thrives on this cycle. Tax the rich, spark demand, fund the realm. You nod, impressed by how a tax on sandals fuels both art and power. The workshop's rhythm is hypnotic, with artisans chatting over their work, their voices blending with the clink of beads. A griot nearby sings of a craftsman who made slippers so fine a king paid double, then taxed him triple. You chuckle, thinking the king probably taxed the guy's dreams too. Joke too, folks, keep drifting. These artisans aren't just creating, they're navigating Mali's tax web, balancing profit and pride. You spot a young apprentice, his hands stained with dye, learning to craft slippers that'll one day grace a noble's feet. He's part of a boom that's transforming Niani, making it a hub for craftsmanship rivaling Timbuktu's markets. As you wander, you pass a cart loaded with leather, likely taxed at some border, like the salt slabs from your caravan days. The artisans grumble about costs but keep weaving, their work a testament to Mali's ability to turn taxes into opportunity. You hear a tale of a slipper maker who tried dodging the tax by selling plain sandals, only to be caught when a noble complained about the peasant vibes. You smirk, joke 3, served with a yawn. The sun dips lower, and the workshops glow, their creations a bridge between Mali's markets and its might. You're ready to brave the trade routes again, where bandits and storms threaten the Empire's tax-fueled dreams. You're back in the Sahara's unforgiving embrace, far from Niani's workshops and their slipper-crafting hum. Remember those charmed souls. It's the 14th century, and you're trudging alongside another salt caravan, the kind you joined before, its camels groaning under slabs of white gold. The air's dry as a griot's wit, and the horizon shimmers like a fever dream. These trade routes, pulsing with salt and taxable goods like those fancy slippers, are Mali's arteries, but they're fraught with perils, bandits, storms, and mirages that could break a trader's spirit. The wind's soft howl lulls you, like a fan's hum, deeper into this drowsy tale. Historical records, like those from Ibn Battuta's travels, confirm that Mali's trade routes were vital but dangerous, with taxes on salt and luxury goods funding guards to protect caravans from raiders. You're walking beside a trader, his face creased from squinting into sandstorms, clutching a staff like it's his last friend. Each salt slab on his camel, destined for Timbuktu's markets, will face the taxman's scale. That turbaned collector's still out there. But first, it has to survive this trek. You feel the tension, lose a load to bandits, and the Empire's coffers take a hit. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders tied bells to their camels, believing the jingle scared off desert spirits and thieves alike. You smirk, imagining a bandit fleeing from a camel's bad karaoke, probably less effective than a good guard dog. Historians still argue whether these bells were practical or just a noisy superstition. You're tempted to whisper to the trader, "Mate, your bell's scaring me more than the bandits." That's joke number 1, delivered with a sleepy grin. The caravan plods on, and you notice the lead trader scanning the dunes, his hand shielding his eyes. Bandits are real, tribes who'd rather steal salt than mine it. And you spot fresh tracks in the sand, too neat to be natural. The traders tighten their formation, their voices low and urgent. A sandstorm looms, its growl mixing with the camel's grunts, and you pull your scarf tighter, tasting grit. Mali's taxes, like those on the slippers in Niani, fund patrols to keep these routes open. But out here, you're on your own. You recall Mansa Musa's wealth, his gold-dropping pilgrimage, and realize it depends on these risky treks surviving. You pause to sip from a water skin, the water warm as bath water, and hear a trader mutter about a storm that once buried a caravan's salt, leaving them to face the taxman empty-handed. You chuckle, thinking the tax collector probably taxed their tears instead. Joke too, folks. Let's keep drifting. The caravan's rhythm is hypnotic, each step a crunch in the sand, and a griot among the traders hums a tale of a merchant who outsmarted bandits by hiding salt in hollow gourds, only to lose them to a clumsy camel. You grin. Joke 3, served with a yawn. The stars emerge as night falls, sharp against the desert's black. You huddle by a fire, the salt slabs glowing faintly, a reminder of the empire's reach. Every load here, every slipper back in Niani, feeds Mali's tax system. But the perils of these routes test its strength. You feel the weight of each step, knowing bandits or storms could cut the empire's lifeline. The traders' murmurs fade, their voices a soothing drone, tying you to the markets and mosques you've seen. You're ready to see how this risky trade shaped Mali's global legacy, its taxes building a name that echoes beyond the sands. You're stepping out of the Sahara's harsh sands, away from the caravan's jangling bells and bandit-haunted trails. Remember those spooky camel tunes? And into the broader pulse of the Mali Empire's golden age. It's the 14th century, and you're standing on a hill overlooking Timbuktu, where minarets pierce the sky and the air hums with the scent of dust and ambition. Mali's tax system, built on salt and slippers, those beaded status symbols, doesn't just fill coffers. It shapes a legacy that makes the world take notice. The evening breeze, soft as a fan's hum, lulls you deeper into this drowsy tale as you explore how taxes turned Mali into a global legend. Historical records, like those from Arab chroniclers, show Mali's tax system, taxing salt from Taghaza's mines and luxury goods like slippers, funded a network of trade and learning that rivaled empires across continents. You gaze at Timbuktu's bustling streets below, where caravans unload salt slabs, each one taxed to support mosques, libraries, and Mansa Musa's fame. Remember his gold-crashing pilgrimage? This system, rooted in Sundiata's vision, makes Mali a beacon, drawing scholars from Cairo and merchants from Morocco. You feel the empire's reach, its taxes weaving a web that stretches far beyond the Sahara. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some griots claimed Mali's tax collectors used star charts to track trade routes, believing celestial patterns ensured fair levies. You smirk, imagining turban guy squinting at the sky, taxing by starlight, probably as accurate as a horoscope for your taxes. Historians still argue whether this was a real practice or just poetic flair to hype Mali's sophistication. You're tempted to whisper to a passing scholar, "Mate, hope the stars don't tax your slippers." That's joke number 1, delivered with a sleepy grin. You wander closer to a madrasa, its walls alive with students debating over manuscripts. Taxes on salt and slippers fund these schools, making Timbuktu a global hub where ideas flow like the Niger River. You see a merchant, his robe dusted with sand, paying a tax on a salt slab with a grudging nod. The collector, turban guy's distant cousin, no doubt, scribbles in a ledger, ensuring every coin strengthens Mali's name. You recall the slipper tax rebellion in Niani, those nobles waving sandals like flags, and realize this system doesn't just collect wealth, it projects power, showing the world Mali's might. The city's rhythm is soothing, with griots singing of a trader who paid his taxes in slippers, only to find they didn't fit the king's feet. You chuckle, thinking the king probably taxed his fashion sense next. Joke too, folks. Keep drifting. Mali's legacy isn't just gold or mosques. It's the way taxes tie markets to manuscripts, caravans to classrooms. You pass a mosque, its minaret glowing in the twilight, built with wealth from salt and sandal taxes. The empire's influence reaches Europe, where maps start marking Timbuktu as a city of wonders, all thanks to this system. As you leave the hill, a griot's voice floats over, telling of a merchant who tried bribing a tax collector with a camel, only to lose both to a sandstorm. You grin, joke 3, served with a yawn. The stars above mirror Mali's ambition, each tax a spark in its global flame. You're starting to see how this system, taxing everything from salt to souls, built a legacy that outshines its neighbors. The city hums below, and you're ready to ponder the debates over whether Mali's taxes were fair or a royal squeeze as the empire's story deepens. You're lingering in Timbuktu's twilight glow, where the air carries the scent of old manuscripts and the distant clink of market coins. It's the 14th century, and you're sitting on a worn mat outside a scholar's hut, the hum of debate as soothing as a fan's drone, pulling you deeper into Mali's sleepy saga. The empire's tax system, squeezing salt slabs and fancy slippers, remember those beaded show-offs, is under scrutiny here. You're diving into the arguments swirling among historians, past and present, about whether Mali's taxes were a fair deal or a royal shakedown. The stars above twinkle like the gold dust that fuels this empire, and you're ready to ponder the scales of justice. Historical accounts, like those from Ibn Battuta, describe Mali's tax system as a marvel of organization, funding everything from Timbuktu's libraries to Mansa Musa's mosques, with revenue from salt and luxury goods. You overhear scholars debating nearby, their voices a gentle buzz, questioning if the taxes were equitable. The salt trade, those heavy slabs you saw in caravans, bore heavy levies, but so did the elite's slippers, balancing the burden across classes. You picture a merchant grumbling as he pays his dues. Turban Guy's ledger never sleeps, but the roads and schools his taxes fund are hard to argue with. Still, fairness? That's the question. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some locals believed tax collectors cursed dodgers with bad luck, claiming unpaid dues angered ancestral spirits. You smirk, imagining a merchant tripping over his slippers after skimping on taxes. Probably just a stubbed toe, not a ghost. Historians still argue whether Mali's taxes were progressive, hitting the rich harder, or oppressive, squeezing traders dry. You're tempted to whisper to a scholar, "Mate, maybe the spirits taxed their patience first." That's joke number 1, delivered with a drowsy grin. You lean closer to the debate, catching snippets about tax rates, sometimes a fifth of a salt slab's value, sometimes half a slipper's worth in gold. The system, built on Sundiata's grit and Musa's flair, remember his gold-soaked pilgrimage, aimed to fund stability. But scholars wonder if it favored the crown too much. You see a trader nearby, his turban sagging, counting cowrie shells for a tax payment. He's not thrilled, but the mosque glowing across the street, built with his coins, silences his complaints. You nod, feeling the tension. Taxes built Mali's glory, but at what cost to its people? The scholars' voices blend with a griot's song, its cadence lulling you like a desert breeze. He sings of a merchant who hid salt to dodge taxes, only to lose it to a greedy camel. You chuckle, thinking the camel probably demanded a tax refund. Joke too, folks. Keep drifting. The debate heats up. Some argue the taxes were fair, supporting trade routes and schools. Others say they crushed small traders, leaving nobles in their shiny slippers untouched. You recall the slipper tax rebellion in Niani. Those sandal-waving nobles weren't exactly starving. The truth, as always, lies in the sandy middle. As you rise from the mat, the city's hum surrounds you, tying markets to mosques, salt to slippers. A griot's tale floats over, about a tax collector who forgave a poor trader's debt, only to be taxed for excess kindness. You grin, joke 3, served with a yawn. The debate lingers, unanswerable, like the stars above. Mali's taxes, fair or not, built an empire that dazzled the world, but you sense its golden age fading. You're ready to trace the decline of this system, as salt and slippers lose their shine in the empire's twilight. You're drifting from Timbuktu's scholarly debates, where taxes sparked heated arguments, remember those griots blaming spirits for dodged dues, into the Mali Empire's quieter twilight. It's the late 14th century, and you're wandering through a market in Gao, the empire's eastern edge, where the air feels heavier, tinged with dust and fading glory. The salt and slipper taxes, once the empire's heartbeat, are losing their grip, and you're here to witness the slow unraveling of a system that turned sand into gold. The evening's cool hum, like a fan's soft whir, pulls you deeper into this drowsy tale. Historical records, like those from later Songhai chroniclers, note that Mali's tax system, so vital under Mansa Musa, began to falter as internal strife and external pressures grew. You're standing by a market stall, smaller than Niani's, where salt slabs, those caravan treasures, sit unsold, their edges crumbling like the empire itself. The slipper trade, once a taxable flex, remember those beaded show-offs, is slowing too. Fewer nobles strut, and artisans' stalls look sparse. You see a tax collector, his turban faded, scribbling half-hearted notes. The system, built on Sundiata's vision and Musa's wealth, is creaking under neglect and rebellion. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some merchants started bartering salt for slippers to dodge taxes, claiming no gold, no tax. You smirk, picturing a collector chasing a guy swapping sandals for salt, like it's a desert flea market, probably as chaotic as a camel in a sandstorm. Historians still argue whether this bartering undermined Mali's economy or was just a desperate workaround. You're tempted to whisper to the collector, "Mate, tax the barter, not my patience." That's joke number 1, delivered with a sleepy grin. You wander past a quiet workshop where an artisan stitches slippers with less flair than Niani's craftsman. The tax on luxury goods, once a gold mine, now yields less as trade routes falter. You recall the caravan's dangers, bandits and storms. Those jingling camel bells didn't help much, and hear whispers of Songhai raiders cutting into Mali's roots. The empire's tax collectors, once sharp as hawks, struggle to enforce levies when goods barely arrive. You see a merchant, his face lined with worry, paying a tax in cowrie shells. But the collector's ledger looks thinner, like a griot's song losing its tune. The market's hum is softer now, almost mournful, as a griot sings of a king who taxed salt until the mines ran dry. Poetic, not literal, but it stings. You chuckle, thinking the king probably taxed the griot's metaphors too. Joke 2, folks, keep drifting. The decline isn't just about taxes. It's about power slipping through Mali's fingers. Timbuktu's libraries still buzz, but Gao feels like an outpost, its mosques less grand. You pass a salt slab, untaxed because no one's buying, and feel the empire's pulse slowing, its wealth no longer dazzling the world. A griot's voice carries over, telling of a trader who hid slippers in a salt sack, only to be caught when the bag split open. You grin. Joke 3, served with a yawn. The stars above Gao gleam, but the market's fading, and you sense the end of an era. Mali's tax system, once tying salt to slippers to global fame, is unraveling as new powers rise. You're ready to reflect on the empire's legacy, its story settling like dust in the desert night. You're standing on the edge of Gao, where the Mali Empire's once vibrant pulse now fades into the desert's quiet embrace. It's the late 14th century, and the air carries a soft whisper of dust, mingling with the faint scent of salt left unsold in the market. Remember those crumbling slabs? The slipper stalls, once bursting with beaded splendor, are sparse, their colors muted under a weary sun. You're here to reflect on Mali's legacy, as the empire that taxed salt and slippers, those noble flexes, slips into a gentle sleep. The night's calm, like a fan's soothing hum, wraps you in this final, drowsy chapter. Historical records, like those from Songhai chroniclers, confirm Mali's decline as rival empires like Songhai rose. But its tax system left a legacy of wealth and learning that echoed across centuries. You gaze at the horizon, where Timbuktu's minarets still stand, a testament to taxes that funded libraries and mosques. The salt trade, those heavy slabs you trekked with, and the slipper taxes, born from Sundiata's vision and Musa's gold. Remember his market-crashing pilgrimage? Built an empire that dazzled the world. You feel its shadow lingering, even as Gao's markets quiet. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some griots sang that Mali's last kings taxed dreams, claiming sleep held secrets of wealth. You smile, imagining a collector like Turban Guy knocking on your dreams, probably easier than taxing a camel's bad attitude. Historians still argue whether Mali's tax system delayed its fall or hastened it by overburdening traders. You're tempted to murmur to a passing griot, "Mate, don't tax my snooze." That's joke number 1, whispered with a sleepy grin. You wander past a lone stall where an old artisan stitches a slipper, its beads catching the starlight. The empire's tax system, once a mighty web tying salt to sandals, now feels like a fading song. You recall the caravan's dangers, the slipper tax rebellions, and the scholars' debates, each a thread in Mali's story. The griot's voice nearby, soft as a lullaby, sings of a merchant who left his last salt slab as an offering to the desert, hoping for better days. You chuckle, thinking he probably hoped the taxman wouldn't follow. Joke 2, delivered with a yawn. The stars above glitter like the gold dust Mali once hoarded, and you feel the empire's legacy settle around you. Its taxes built Timbuktu's libraries, where manuscripts still whisper of salt's value and slipper's pride. You pass a crumbling mosque, its walls holding memories of Musa's reign, and sense the empire's heartbeat slowing. A griot's tale drifts over, about a king who taxed laughter, only to find his court silent. You grin. Joke 3, served with a final, sleepy nod. Mali's story, woven from salt, slippers, and ambition, leaves a glow that outlasts its decline. Wind down. Now, as the desert night wraps you in its cool embrace, let the hum of Mali's tale settle like soft sand. Picture yourself lying under those stars, the empire's echoes fading into a gentle hush. The salt slabs, the beaded slippers, the tax collector's ledgers, they're all drifting away, leaving only the quiet rhythm of your breath. You've walked through markets, crossed dunes, and heard griots sing of kings and rebels. Let their voices fade now, blending with the night's calm. The Mali Empire sleeps, its legacy safe in the stars' glow, and you can rest, too, carried by the desert's whisper. Close your eyes, let the fan's hum take over, and drift into dreams as soft as a griot's lullaby.